it's Juck.
I think is his name JUCK? JUCK, right? I think
JUCK on Bucks.
JUCK on Bucks. Yeah.
JUCK is around where I'm from.
Oh, is he? Are you in Ohio?
Yep. In Akron. He in Akron too.
In Akron.
Oh, nice. That's LeBron territory.
That's LeBron. I was about to say, man, you guys heavy Braun fans out there, huh?
Yeah, he ain't
not really.
Around here, he's kind of a.
Oh, really?
Let's get it. And welcome in. Thanks so much for joining me today at Juck on Bucks. I appreciate you guys so much. As always, we've got probably not the longest show today, as I don't got a ton to get into. I've been really, really busy. Last night, which was Tuesday night, I was on an Oregon show, Sports Chat 503, and that went an hour and 20 minutes on a live stream. I learned quite a few things, interesting things about Oregon. We talked all things Oregon and Buckeyes. If you want to watch that, I'm going to link that in the description of this video here. It was me and Ryan Winters, and he is a history teacher. So YouTube's not his job. It's kind of similar to me. It's just his hobby. He's got a setup like mine, which is really sweet, only it's Oregon. But he wasn't from that set. He was from the ocean. So the ocean's his backdrop in this particular video. But we had a good time. And I really want to thank all the Buckeyes that came and joined me. There was 200 people in the live stream. And I felt like, from my point of view, the Buckeyes took it over, just like we do everywhere we go, which is something I always love about our fan base. But I had a really good time and definitely learned a couple of things. And then Wednesday, I filled in on another Ohio State show, an hour-long show, or an hour-long episode on that show, which some of you guys, I'm sure, will probably see Friday or maybe even Monday. You know, the point is, I've been pretty busy with some other stuff and kind of slacked on my research and my normal show. So I don't have a ton of stuff today. However, it was a pretty slow news day anyway, so I don't feel incredibly bad about it. But we do got some stuff to go over for sure. Ryan Winters. So Ryan Winters is a bit of an Oregon historian. And I've been saying for a while that I think just based on where Oregon is as a program, the kind of leveling up they've done year over year, which has now kind of reached this fevered pitch with recruiting, with the hot young coach, with the investment from the fans and the financial investment, with the transfer portal, with coming to the Big Ten and playing their very first huge Big Ten game at home, that this game at Autzen Stadium, when we travel out there, is got to be like a top 5 game in the history of that stadium. And he led off the show kind of talking about that very topic.
State might be, no hyperbole here, the biggest game at Autzen Stadium ever.
The biggest game ever. Now, this is a guy who obviously knows his stuff. If you watch the episode, you can see he goes through and rattles off all the biggest games he can remember in his life. And this one is the biggest ever, which, you know, I expected maybe top 5. I wasn't expecting that. It's really cool to hear. You always love to be someone else's biggest game ever in a certain scenario. I will tell you one thing in interacting with a lot of these Oregon fans, a couple things. First off, they're always really cool. But second, gosh, do they hang on to that win that they had in the horseshoe like it was yesterday. And these are the same teams that are about to play next year, which, as we know, couldn't be further from the truth. But I'm not going to sit here and make excuses for that game, but there were definitely a lot of reasons, right, that particular team, that Buckeye team, looked the way they did that day. And, you know, excuses, I'm not making any. They won the game. They deserve to gloat about it. But if you're using that game as a metric for what this next game is going to look like, yeah, that's not really going to get you anywhere. I mean, I know you're happy that you won that game, but, you know, if you want to keep hanging on to that and thinking that that's going to get you somewhere, I don't think that's going to work out too well for you. When you think back to all of the good Oregon and good Washington teams, these two teams have played like 115 times in the history of the rivalry. And lots of times, you would imagine, came into the game ranked as 2 top 25 teams, right? Well, as he was rattling off the biggest games in the history of Autzen Stadium, he dropped this little nugget on me
App State. I'm sure you guys love that one.
Mm-hmm.
And then it went into the era where it was, the Chip Kelly era and all that sort of stuff. And we had a Michigan State game with them. That was a huge game. That was probably the biggest game, but it was all non-con. In conference, always it's a USC game. It's maybe a Washington game. Historically, we've had a couple Civil Wars that have been really close up there. It was one where it was, both top 15 or whatever. But for the most part, Oregon has not really been good when the other people have been good, and then Oregon hasn't been, Oregon's been good when the other teams were out, like Washington, for example. Out of the whole 100-and-something year history with Washington, we've only had about 5 or 6 games where both teams were ranked top 25 and ready to rumble. For both teams, it's either one's good and one's bad. It's a crazy stat. We haven't had that many matchups.
Wait a minute. I want to make sure I just heard you right. Yeah. Did you just say in the history of the Washington-Oregon rivalry, you've only had about 5 times where they've both been ranked in the top 25?
I mean, maybe over the last couple of years it's added to that, and it's up to like 7 or something now. But there was a
that blows my mind. Hearing it again blows my mind again. When I think back throughout my college football fandom at all the good, and we're not even talking great, just good Washington and good Oregon teams, they flood my memory. The different years, watching them just as good teams. Being ranked in the top 25 as no big accomplishment. I mean, we're not talking top 10. We're talking in the top 25. To have only had 5 to 7 of those out of 115-ish matchups, I couldn't believe it. I thought he misstated what he had just said. That unbelievable. Something else that I've noticed recently is there are a whole lot of parallels going on between their rivalry with Washington and ours with Michigan. And I brought that up last night as well. Very interesting when you look at kind of the parallels between Ohio State and our rival and you two guys, how it's kind of been Oregon's been the dominant force in that rivalry for a while now. Yeah. And then Washington just happened to pop up and do what they did last year. And the same thing over here, where we've been the dominant force in the rivalry. And then Michigan pops up and does what they did last year. Washington loses their coach. Michigan loses their coach. They're both headed back down to the gutter. And we're right up here fighting for a national championship. How do you like that? And that is the truth, of course. Michigan, Washington, headed right back down. They popped up. They're going right back down. Ohio State and Oregon staying right there, come into the season ranked top 3, both of them. And that's just what happens when you have a true winning culture. It's not just a flash in the pan program. It's sustained excellence. And I'm not saying Oregon's on the sustained excellence level with us, but compared to Washington, they are for sure. Washington, good team year in and year out usually, but not that kind of good. And that's the same with Michigan. Now, another thing I learned that I did not know is that in that rivalry, Washington really thinks they are they're really something. They look at Oregon as kind of the unwashed masses, stick their nose up at them. They're the better, higher learning institution. They're the classy ones. They think of the Oregon folks as hillbillies and not hillbillies. I'm using that name because that's what we use around here. They think of them as less than. We'll put it that way. Just another thing to add to that parallel there. I guess the point is, I chose the right one to root for when I was a kid in that rivalry over there because I always rooted for the green, not the purples. And good on little JUCK. So Tuesday we talked about a quarterback that had been at camp at Ohio State. And this quarterback, Brady Hart, came to Ohio State camp. And then the day after, it might have even been that night, it was announced that he had signed at Michigan, which I pointed out on the show and I thought was just really something. Well, he did an interview with On3. And you want to talk about a young man who really gets the rivalry already, one day into his commitment. This was something here. So we'll start here. He came in through at the camp. He's not been a guy that's really been on the Buckeyes' radar. They put an offer into him. Getting an offer obviously does not mean that you can say, okay, I'm in, In fact, more often than not, it doesn't mean that. You take 25 guys in a class, you give out several hundred offers in some cases. For instance, Michigan signed that 3-star running back we talked about last week. Tony Alford signed him. Everybody was clowning this kid because he's a 3-star, which I don't like at all. But really what they were doing was making fun of the Michigan fans who were trying to say that they had really stolen this big prize in Tony Alford from us. So it was kind of just a way to say, look, we told you this guy's, we weren't lying. We really wanted him gone. They thought that was not true, that we were just spinning that, but we did. And now they've got him. So he brings in this running back, and they're trying to defend this guy by saying he's not a 3-star. Look at his offer list, which contained offers from Florida State and maybe Alabama and some other big schools. But he chose Michigan over Georgia Tech and North Carolina because those offers were non-committable offers. I'm not saying Brady Hart's offer was a non-committable offer, but it's kind of fool's gold when you look at someone's recruit sheet and just go and look at their offers and say, oh, this guy got offered by Georgia and Alabama, therefore he must be good. And people will say, don't look at the rating, look at the offers. That's often not going to tell you anything either, unless you know if it's a committable offer or not. In this 3-star guy's case, it was not, or else he wouldn't have been down to UNC and Georgia Tech and Michigan. That was his biggest and best offer that he could accept, and he did. So Brady Hart gets this offer at the camp. And if Brady Hart would have said when they gave him that offer, Coach Day, thank you so much for your offer, I'm in. Coach Day would have said, yo, hold on. You're moving a little too fast, buddy. That's not how we're doing it here. So Brady Hart leaves. He leaves the camp, and he says that on his way to the airport, he calls Sharon Moore and commits to Michigan. He just said this to On3. This kid's perfect for this rivalry. He tells them that, and then he says this. I knew it was Michigan after I walked out of Ohio State. Michigan was unbelievable and amazing, and when I walked out of Ohio State, I realized the culture that Michigan has isn't everywhere. There's not a place like Michigan when it comes to the ability to win, the type of guys and the coaching staff, Coach Moore. So I called him and committed while I was in Columbus. I thought it was pretty ironic and crazy how it worked out, but I wasn't going to wait another minute. Now, for an 18-year-old kid to know exactly what to do in that situation to rev up the rivalry, pretty impressive to me. But it sounds like this kid came to Ohio State trying to impress Ryan Day enough to get a whole lot of interest from Ryan Day. And when he noticed that interest wasn't coming, because the conversation that was probably had with him was, we're going to offer you, we're going to watch you and see how things progress your senior season. And this guy wanted to commit now. He had a crystal ball put out for him when he visited Clemson last week. This dude wanted to commit. So Michigan wanted him. They wanted that offer. It was very committable, and it was committable right now. I'm not saying he's not a good quarterback. He's a top 100 guy. But Ryan Day wasn't all in on him immediately. You know, they're still evaluating who they want. They select their quarterback in most instances, and they weren't ready to select this guy. So he took a shot at him on the way out the door. And obviously, when he talks about Michigan's culture, I don't know if he's had a visit to Michigan or not. He hasn't had a visit to Ohio State. He was at a camp throwing on a football field for 3 hours. So trying to say he knows Ohio State culture enough to say that, that's really something, man. That is really something. But hey, props to him. He knows how to fire it up. And I'll tell you, when I read it, I got fired up at first. But, you know, that's how it goes. And it seems as though the gentleman at 247, who kind of are very heavily involved in the ones who are making those rankings at the top, really are leaning towards making Tavien the number 1 overall in the class, which would be really awesome for him, really awesome for us. And here's what they had to say. This is Cooper Patania and Andrew Ivins of 247, 2 of their top brass.
Tavien St. Clair. We talked about him earlier in the day, why we like him so much, 6'4", 225 pounds. It was the first time for me seeing him live in person, Drew. I think the biggest thing is he's a big athlete, and we applauded KJ Lacey the way that he moves in the pocket. KJ Lacey's about 5'10 plus, 5'11. At 6'4", Tavien St. Clair makes it look pretty easy, smooth, mechanically, can get the ball anywhere he wants on the field, 3-level passer. You've really kind of been the champion of this guy behind the scenes. How'd you feel tonight to kind of see him in this setting?
Well, I mean, this is supposed to be the top quarterbacks in the country. Bryce Underwood, our number 1 ranked player, the LSU commit, he's not here participating. And Tavien St. Clair is making a case that, hey, maybe I should be number 1. We had some debate when we rolled out that 32-player 5-star field after we saw Tavien St. Clair play 7-on-7. We saw him at the Elite 11 Regional. I think his arrow continues to point up. You look at the year-over-year improvement from his freshman season when he was debating playing baseball or football, chose football. Smart man. He's going to make a ton of money, I think, one day when you look at that frame. Coop, I've been thinking about this ever since that workout wrapped up. If you took Tavien St. Clair and you put him on this Elite 11 field last year, I think we'd be having the same type of reaction. You know, he is Dylan Raiola, but an athletic Dylan Raiola, right? And he can move so well. Clean mechanics, you said it. I didn't think there were many bad throws.
Let's talk.
An athletic Dylan Raiola. That cracked me up. I was asked today if I think that he is a CJ Stroud, Justin Fields level prospect. And I just have a hard time saying that anybody coming out of high school is that type of prospect. It doesn't compute to me. But when you talk about the guys who maybe just came out last year, hell yes, he blows them out of the water. Dylan Raiola, not close to Tavien St. Clair. There's no way Raiola would have been ranked over him. I think the most interesting thing would be to see Tavien St. Clair and Julian Sayin at that Elite 11 together, because, not that we've put much thought into it, but I was thinking today, we talk about a McCord and Devin Brown quarterback battle. We're in store for some doozies in this fan base when we talk about the 3 amazing quarterbacks in Air Nolan, Julian Sayin, and Tavien St. Clair a couple years down the road. If, let's say, for instance, Julian Sayin takes over next season, or in 25, and does good, but not great, and then you're sitting there with the 3 of them, and you're heading into the offseason. It could be something, man. It could really be something. But, I don't even know who I would root for. I guess I would just root for the winner. But talk about 2 guys that are 2 of my favorites of all time, and Julian Sayin and Tavien St. Clair. I'm talking prospects. I just love these 2 guys. But going to be fun, going to be good stuff. And Tavien is in second place after day 1 at the Elite 11. I sure am rooting for him to win. I want him to take over that number 1 spot from Bryce Underwood. Bring that to Ohio, like the guys brought everything to Ohio. Absolutely love the kid, man. What a family, what a kid. And his little brother is now going to be coming up next. RIAN St. Clair is his name. He's going to be the quarterback at Bell Fountain. And dude was dropping some dimes at the 7-on-7 camp at Ohio State. Matter of fact, I got a video here. I'll tell you the level of confidence I have in Tavien St. Clair as a prospect, though. Terrell Pryor is the last quarterback that came in that my confidence level of this guy's going to be incredibly good. There was no thought in my mind that he might be a bust or might not, or might just be average. When Terrell Pryor was coming in, that the level of confidence that he could just come in and physically make it work, even if he needed time to learn an offense, learn how to throw, he could physically come in and pretty much play college football day 1 at a very high level. And that's the level of confidence I have with Tavien St. Clair too. I just think there's no way that this guy couldn't figure it out with his physical tools well enough to come in day 1 and go win college football games. I really think he could. I think he's that good. Championships, no. But yeah, absolutely. He could come in day 1. Dylan Raiola is doing it at Nebraska, looking good doing it. And Dylan Raiola, nowhere near the prospect. Well, I guess he's somewhere near. But he's not the prospect Tavien St. Clair was. Not at all. Tavien St. Clair's the athletic Dylan Raiola. That was funny, man. Andrew Ivins of 247 also questioned whether Ohio State would be able to sign the top class in 2025 without signing one of those classic wide receiver classes that everybody knows Brady Hart lined up for. He points out the irony that this year Ohio State has the best shot they've probably ever had at the number one class and don't have that wide receiver class or even that one big dog wide receiver in it. It's an interesting talking point. I've talked plenty about getting that number one class. I think it is important. I want to get it done. I want to get the monkey off the back. For any Ohio State fan who's followed recruiting close, it's been something that's frustrated the heck out of us for a long time because we could have won it so many times just by taking, not so many times, we could have won it a few times with just a little bit bigger of a class. And we never would get up to their level, the Bamas or Georgias, with whatever numbers they were taking for that cycle, whether it would have been 27 or whatever it was. We just would need a couple more recruits and we wouldn't bring them in. And it would just be like, why? Can we just take a couple more? We can figure out how to manage this roster. They do it. We can do it. But not that big of a deal. No, it's not. But it would really suck if the reason we didn't win it was because we didn't get the wide receiver, which we don't even really need, which means the class is excellent for us. We don't need that superstar wide receiver anyway. And we know that ours are pretty good that are in this class right now in Quincy and Dez. And I still think Vernell Brown is coming. I really do. And I think he's dynamic and I can't wait. But David Sanders, the talk of the day was the Jackson Lloyd situation, the David Sanders situation, and of course the Jake Cook situation. So basically all Buckeye football talk today was about offensive line. Of course, the Justin Fry conversation. Man, it was all day. It was relentless. It was relentless in my comments. It was relentless on everything I watched. The offensive line conversation yesterday that I had on the show was a bit of a lightning rod too. So many comments about it from you guys. I'll read a couple of them. But man, listen, I just want to reiterate where I think we are here. I think that getting Carter Lowe out of Toledo was an excellent get for Justin Fry. Going against Michigan for a Toledo lineman, always a very tough get. Not your typical, he's from Ohio kid. To brush it off like that, I think is being a little unfair. And just say, it's an Ohio kid, of course he got him. Definitely a different level. It really is. Jake Cook, Andrew Stargell, two guys in this class. I think those are really good evaluations myself. You may disagree, but I feel good that he found those. And I think that good evaluations sometimes are every bit as hard as landing that top 200 overall lineman. So I give him kudos for that, even if he struck out before he, several areas till he got to those guys. All that I care about in the end is 3 years down the road, do we have quality linemen who are ready to start? Now, even without David Sanders, I still thought there was some ways we could have had a good class. But now that Jackson Lloyd is gone, and I really am not buying the smoke with Micah DeBose, I don't really see any way that we're going to come out of this happy without David Sanders. That's my thought on it anyway. But the frustrating part to me is how we got to where we're at. And that is Fry's strategy, casting this small net and then abandoning ship on his strategy 4 weeks ago and firing out these offers. Zaire Addison, Henry Fanuco, Mario Nash, Jackson Lloyd. I really think the Buckeyes would have landed one or two of these guys had they been in on them longer because they all were so interested as soon as we got in. Today, a listener had this to say. They didn't lose out on Lloyd. He had been recruited by Alabama's new staff for over 2 years. It was a great job just getting him on campus. You need to stop talking like they're losing guys they should be getting instead of what it really is. He was locked in somewhere else and they worked hard to get him to visit. You do mention that, but after saying they lost him, let's roll the tape. Well, it's a good day and a bad day. So the Buckeyes lose out on offensive lineman Jackson Lloyd. Really good offensive tackle from Carmel, California. Big dude. And he was clearly interested in the Buckeyes, but in my opinion, they just got on him too late. He was already really in on Alabama when the Bucks went after him, when Chip Kelly offered him when he was out on his West Coast swing. And that was in the second wave of offensive lineman offers not too long ago. Jackson Lloyd was on campus in Columbus within a week of that offer. So clearly interested in Ohio State. But he was just a little too dug in with Alabama by that time. Bucks did not have a chance to develop that long-term relationship. He came for an official. Official went really well, but he just had his official this past weekend at Alabama, and they were able to close the door on him. All right, so what I said about Jackson Lloyd was this. Right? So exactly the same thing as what this guy just said. Yes, it's true. They didn't offer until 4 weeks ago. He was entrenched in Alabama, and I think the Buckeyes would have had a shot had they got in on him early to pry him away from Alabama. Takes time to do that when someone else has a good relationship, right? So we said essentially the same thing. Only this guy isn't okay with me saying that because of this reason. Yes, I mentioned that in my comment, but you have to realize you're not talking to the brightest bulbs, and that a large portion of listeners will get from that is the Buckeyes lose an offensive tackle recruit. And it will continue a narrative. Check it out. I call things the way I see them. Everything I said was factually correct. I do my homework and I give my opinion on things. And, you know, I'm not always perfect. I'm not always right. That's for sure. But in this particular case, I'm 100% right. Waiting 4 weeks before a kid's going to commit to offer him, not your best strategy. Offering half the offers of Alabama and Georgia on the offensive line, not the best strategy. Everything I've said about Justin Fry this entire time has been accurate. I've also given him his credit. I've also said I think that the offensive line is going to play way better this year. And I've also said that I think that the class next year is going to be really good. So, you know, I give him his props, and I say where I think he's done a bad job. And the strategy he entered this recruiting class with was a poor strategy. Nothing wrong with that. He admitted it himself, right? He admitted it with the flurry of offers we saw 4 weeks ago. That's admitting that it was a failure. All I'm doing is pointing it out. Being a little frustrated by it too. But you guys are frustrated, whatever. We're all frustrated. But the point is this, David Sanders, we're still looking really good, you know? We're still right there. We get him, and we're going to be really, really happy. However, got to remember, though, if we get him, we can't go turning around and saying, well, now all we got is David Sanders and this and that. Like we can't do that. You know what I'm saying? Now, everything's got to be all good. He buys himself some grace. We got to remember that. You know, some people might get it so ingrained in their head that you know, Fry, no good, that they want to carry that on. We can't do that, right? That won't be fair, guys. Mark Griffin says Sanders is going to the highest bidder. Yes, I could be wrong. Would be nice to get him. Keep it up, Juck. Thanks, buddy. There are definitely some prospects that are on this board right now, on Ohio State's board, that I think have the mindset not going to the highest bidder, but you better be in this specific ballpark if you want to play ball. And I'm not going to say who I think those guys are because I think that comes off as coming down on them, which I'm not. That's part of what this is. And some people that means more than others. I think that comes off to some people when they hear it, though, that they're greedy or they're me first. And, you know, if that's your opinion, fine. I'm just not going to say who I think that is. But David Sanders and that Sanders family, I really don't. And I think that they are not just into his education. We're talking about a kid who wants to be a surgeon. They're into his education, and everywhere that is still in on David Sanders is basically giving him a max deal. Whatever the hell max is, it's so much money, more than these people, you know, or any of us have ever seen. that, it's whatever. The difference between $100,000 here or $100,000 here when you're dealing with a couple of million, probably not that big of a deal. And again, I'm just throwing numbers out there hypothetically, but that's probably the ratio of what we're talking about here. We don't know exactly what these guys are getting, these superstar tackles, but the Sanders family, I really don't think that it's anything like that with them. Could be wrong. I don't think so. But yes, there's definitely some who have that mindset. And I don't just mean some around college football. I mean some that we're after. And we only go all in when we absolutely think that it's a position of need, in a position that we refuse to lose. And there's only a couple of those. Or if it's a transcendent talent, like a Jeremiah Smith. Justin Fry's time here is not looking good. He better have a big year next year. He has to go. All right. Silver Bullet Nation says, I have to agree with your point about the season being just focused on the playoffs. We wait all year to enjoy Saturdays of watching the Buckeyes. I don't want to diminish that with just the thought of the season being just for the playoffs. Yes, we want to go to the playoffs, obviously, but we also love seeing these young guys get in games and develop. Our key matchup against Penn State and, of course, the game. I don't want to rush the season just to get to the end. We enjoy the ride and grind of the season as fans. I couldn't agree more, man. And sometimes that's what it feels like. Nothing but planning for the end of the season, racing through shitty games in the beginning of the season, starting off the season with 3 crap teams in a regular season, and I don't consider this one a regular season. The intrigue that we have for this season, so much different than most seasons. But in a regular season, yes, we're incredibly excited to watch our Bucks come back. We got to start this season with 3 dog crap games, man. Like, we're so excited right now, we don't care. I promise you, come week 3, when we're breaking down that matchup before the game, we're going to be past the point where we're ready to play a real game. At least a somewhat real game. These are total cupcakes, man. Not cool, not fun. And a couple more comments on that. But first, General Chrome says, have you noticed that people almost use the roster as a way to criticize Day? No more excuses for him now. Boy, am I with you, buddy. Let me tell you, I actually was on a show and somebody said this, and I just about, like, my jaw hit the floor. Like, you're trying to tell me that this guy does this phenomenal job in recruiting cycle after cycle, gets these seniors to come back, gets some recruits out of the portal to come in, and then you think it's okay to turn around and point the finger at him and say, now you better get it done. You've got all these awesome pieces that you assembled. Yeah, man, I don't find that to be a fair way to do things. I try to keep it fair around here. All right, reviving real news, and this is in talks about my poll of what's your ideal schedule. This isn't 1994. Give me the baddest in the business every single week. We're the Ohio State University, Ohio against the world. And what he's saying is he doesn't want to play 3 cream puffs to start the season. Luke, as always, from the Tailgate podcast, gets into a little bit more detail. Give me one of each. A big game for the spotlight game in recruiting. So he's talking that'd be his Texas game. Then a Power 4 team to give you a bit of a challenge. In my analogy, that was like a West Virginia or an Oklahoma State. And then a MAC team for backups in the freshman work. And that is the schedule that won the poll I put out with all the audience. Everybody wants to play, not everybody. The majority of people want to play one crappy MAC team in state, preferably, to give them the money. Then one mid-level team like a Kansas State or an Oklahoma State or a West Virginia, or maybe even a little less, a Wake Foresty kind of guy. And then, the big dog team. And that would be an excellent non-conference in my estimation. But we did have a couple other interesting views. One guy said he wants to play 12 conference games and just one non-conference game against a big opponent. And, if every other conference was down for that, I guess as long as I get one out of conference game against a primetime opponent once a year, that would make me happy. And then you can do whatever you want. That'll be an upgrade for sure, adding 2 more conference games. So I could get behind it. And if you do that, you could also add the Penn State game back in as an annual matchup if you wanted to, which I know the reason that they didn't protect it is not because they can't fit it in, but they don't want that matchup every year. That's another shit move, man. Jay Thompson says Tegra is a prototype right guard. The thought of adding him to McLaughlin and Jackson has to make a north and south type runner like Judkins even happier than it does me. Tegra is a prototype for sure, man. He really is. And he's been a guy that, we've been waiting to pop. That's a really highly rated guy. That was a big recruiting win, and Tegra certainly got the physical tools to do it. We will see if he's got everything else he needs to crack that lineup. And again, it was Patrick Murphy from Bucknuts covers the team. He's the only one I've seen say recently that he thinks Tegra is going to win that spot. I've seen a lot of Hinsman lately, but, from our standpoint, we don't know anything at this point. If those guys got people leaking them information, they can tell us a little better. Oh, check this stat out. From Ohio State, who never wins anything. The most major bowl wins, BCS New Year's 6 era. Ohio State 13, Alabama 13. Georgia 10, Clemson 7. So Clemson in 4th place, half of Ohio State. Same with LSU, Florida, USC. Look at Michigan with 4. How pathetic. 13-4. This is the school that tries to pretend like they're on our level in any way, shape, or form. It's unbelievable. And our buddy Natty Time says, good show last night with the Ducks crew. You two should definitely do it again a week before we play them after we see both teams play a few games. We're definitely gonna. Don't think the Ducks fans will be so confident as they were in the chat last night. You were definitely more prepared last night than the host. He's an Ohio kid who has worked hard to transform his body. He wanted to be a Buckeye more than anything on earth, and he's a wrestler with a mean streak. Sounds like an interior offensive lineman that I would want on my team. I stand by my comments on your other video. He may not start until 4 or 5 years in the program, but he will eventually be a road grader for us. You know what? It's those 4 or 5 year guys that I absolutely love. Get him in there. Let him grow up in the program. He's going to walk in a boy, come out a man, and it's going to turn out well for him. Could not be happier for the young man, and absolutely wishing him the best. I like him so much. I might get a Jake Cook jersey on the wall. Who knows? Anyway, guys, sorry about the abbreviated Juck Unbucks today. Like I said, I've been talking so much on this doggone microphone that my voice hurts. So I'm going to wrap it up, and I will see you dudes and dudettes tomorrow. Juck Unbucks out. All right, guys, I've talked about Jake Cook incessantly. You're probably annoyed with it. And you guys know I love the Jake Cook man. I just want to go over it one more time because now it's a good story, right? It has a happy ending. I'm sure you've heard by now. Jake Cook finally got his offer. In my opinion, this is over, right? Jake Cook's going to be in this class. I'm just very partial to Ohio players when it comes to Ohio State. And when you talk about guys that are right on the brink, I always want to defer to, yes, let's take that guy. Obviously, I'm biased. I get it. But when you talk about a story like this, so many of us played Ohio high school football and dreamed of an Ohio State offer. Jake Cook, no different. A huge Buckeye fan all his life. Jake Cook was a guy who, throughout the majority of his high school career, was not an Ohio State level prospect. He just wasn't. Had the size, but carried a lot of extra weight on him, wasn't quite strong enough. And Jake changed his habits, changed his body, and went into the offseason ready to show that he was an Ohio State level prospect. Despite earning a Louisville offer and committing to Louisville, which is an amazing accomplishment, he dreamed of playing for the Bucks. So he comes in, and there is an Under Armour camp down in Canton. And everything we're hearing out of this camp from the people that have seen Jake Cook compete in these camps over the years are, whoa, this dude's legit now. And like seriously might be an Ohio State level prospect. And that, I must have seen it on 4 different outlets. From guys that cover these things all over the country. Pretty interesting. Then Jake goes to the Rivals camp, wins the MVP at the Rivals camp.
Say it! Hey, get over there! Good.
And the recap from the guys at the Rivals camp, exact same. Like, whoa, Jake Cook. And we hear from guys close to the program that he's on the Buckeyes radar. We know that he's going to be at the Ohio State camp. So that camp comes. Jake Cook goes there along with a lot of other Ohio prospects, Dwayne Galloway, Nolan Davenport, and we're waiting to see who gets the offers coming out of this camp. Guys that are right on the cusp. Dwayne doesn't, Nolan Davenport doesn't, and Jake doesn't. But Jake absolutely killed it at that camp. Big story about him working so hard. He's throwing up at the camp and right back in there. And despite not getting the offer, Jake comes out of that camp feeling very confident. I talked to him that night and he told me, despite not getting the offer, he sat after that camp and watched film with Justin Fry, offensive line coach, for quite a while. And then he had a meeting with Coach Fry and Coach Day. And they told him straight up, look, we weren't going to offer you coming into this, but you are an Ohio State lineman. We are not ready to do that now, but we're certainly evaluating our options here. So Jake felt confident. About a week and a half later, Jake's team goes to work out at Ohio State. Opened up Jake Cook getting that offer. So our guy came back down and worked out on Wednesday. Jake Cook, I'm talking. Jake Cook comes down, works out Wednesday, and Jake is now working that day with Justin Fry doing center drills. They have the conversation again at the end of practice. This time, Jake leaves with the same exact conversation. That's not what happened here in this case. Jake Cook left with the same conversation that was had with him on the previous workout, which was, without an offer. But, we're still very interested. We're just not going to extend the offer today. As you can imagine, that didn't go over great on the other end. And Jake went and reaffirmed his commitment shortly after that to Louisville on Twitter by posting a graphic in peer recruiting, maybe, 2 hours after he left Columbus. So he wasn't happy, I'm sure. And who would be after breaking your chops and getting told no again and again. So, unfortunate. That sucks. But as of yet, and I still in the end really think that we are going to, despite them not giving him the offer that day, they apparently sat down and reevaluated their board and decided Jake Cook was, in fact, a guy that they want in the class. And they offered him this past weekend. And it's just not often that we see a story like this have a really cool ending. And I just absolutely love it for this kid. I love it for us. I think that he is, when you see somebody who has done what he's done to get where he got in such a short period of time, it's a guy that's got everything in him to do what's needed to get himself to the next level and the next level and the next level. He's got the drive. He's got the prerequisite size, and he's got the nasty in him. And you can have a lineman with all the physical tools in the world who is a highly rated lineman because he has all those physical tools, but he's got those physical tools and he doesn't love football and he's not nasty and he can get by and he can be a good lineman with that. And then you also got the linemen who maybe don't have all the physical tools, but they, and they're lower rated because they don't have all the physical tools, but they have the drive and they have the nasty, and they can also be great linemen. It just takes a little more time to get them there. And Jake has shown what he can do as far as growth, and I couldn't be happier. And I'm really happy that I got a chance to kind of document this as it kind of went on, because I probably talked about him in 5 straight episodes, or probably 5 or 6 episodes leading up to this final conclusion, which it's not over yet. He hasn't officially committed. But, odds are really, really heavy that Jake's in this class.